I raised these children with my bare hands, but they couldn't even offer me a moment of gratitude. The night I realized my own children had grown into strangers, my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even hold my teacup. I stood in my kitchen listening to the refrigerator hum and wondered how a mother's love could echo so loud and still go unheard. I'm 65 years old now, and I've lived a life that demanded strength before it ever offered comfort. I raised my babies with my bare hands, with cracked palms and tired bones, with prayers whispered over boiling pots and unpaid bills. Folks call me Auntie because I've always been that woman, the one who listens, the one who holds it together, the one who keeps the family stitched even when the seams are tearing. But that night, standing alone under that flickering kitchen light, I felt invisible. My house used to breathe with laughter, shoes piled by the door, cereal spilled on the counter, Sunday music floating from room to room. I raised 3 children here after their father passed too soon, God rest his soul. I worked double shifts at the nursing home, came home smelling like antiseptic and exhaustion, and still made sure homework was done and bellies were full. I taught them manners, faith, and how to look someone in the eye without shame. I thought I was raising gratitude along with them. My son Marcus was my firstborn, my pride, tall, soft-spoken, with eyes that always searched mine for approval. I remember the day he brought his wife, Vanessa, home for the first time. She smiled, but her eyes measured my furniture, my walls, my way of living. I told myself not to judge. Love makes room, I whispered to my heart. I didn't know then how much room I'd be forced to surrender. That evening, I had cooked greens the way Marcus loved them, slow and patient with smoked turkey just like his daddy used to. Vanessa barely touched her plate. I don't really eat this kind of food, she said politely. But polite don't always mean kind. Marcus laughed it off, but something shifted in his shoulders. I felt it. Mothers always do. Years passed fast after that. Marcus moved out, got married, started a family of his own. I was proud, Lord knows I was. But pride don't protect you from loneliness. Calls got shorter, visits got rarer. When I spoke, it felt like I was interrupting something more important. Vanessa's voice always sharp in the background, reminding him of schedules, of plans that never included me. One afternoon, I asked Marcus if he could help me fix the leaking sink. Just a small thing, he sighed. Ma, I'm busy. Maybe next month. I stared at the phone long after the line went dead, my heart sinking into places I didn't know were still tender. I wasn't asking for the world. I was asking for my son. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and replayed every sacrifice like a worn-out record. The nights I went hungry so they could eat, the shoes I patched instead of replacing, the dreams I folded away quietly. And yet, here I was, wondering when gratitude became too heavy for them to carry. I wiped my tears before they could fall. Aunties don't cry easy, but something deep inside me knew. This was only the beginning of a lesson I never asked to learn. The morning after that lonely night, I woke up with a heaviness sitting right on my chest, like grief had spent the night and refused to leave. The sun crept through my curtains, soft and golden, but it didn't warm me the way it used to. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, asking myself a question no mother ever wants to ask. Where did I go wrong? I dragged myself out of bed and shuffled into the kitchen, my knees popping like old floorboards. I brewed my coffee slow, just like I always do, because rushing never brought peace into anybody's life. As the smell filled the room, memories followed. Marcus at 8 years old, tugging at my robe, asking for pancakes. Marcus at 16, slamming doors but still kissing my cheek before bed. Marcus grown, standing taller than me, promising, "I got you, Ma, always." Those promises echoed loud that morning. I decided I wouldn't sit in my sorrow. No, ma'am. I picked up the phone and called Marcus myself. It rang too long before he answered. "Hey, Ma," he said, distracted, like he was already halfway out of the conversation. "Good morning, baby," I replied softly. "I was wondering if you and Vanessa might stop by this weekend. I made that peach cobbler you like." There was a pause. Then I heard her voice. "Vanessa," muffled but firm. "Tell her we're busy. We already told her." Marcus cleared his throat. "Ma, we got plans. Maybe another time." Another time. Those words sat bitter on my tongue. "All right, son," I said. "Just thought I'd ask." When the call ended, my hands trembled again. I wasn't angry yet. I was hurt. Hurt has a quieter sound, like something cracking slowly where nobody can see. I looked around my house, at the photos lining the walls. Birthdays, graduations, family barbecues, proof that I mattered once. Later that day, I took the bus to the grocery store. I like watching people. It reminds me the world still moves even when your own heart feels stuck. I saw young mothers struggling with toddlers, couples laughing, elders holding hands. I wondered if those children would remember who raised them when time had taken its toll. When I got home, my neighbor Miss Lorraine waved from her porch. "You all right, Auntie?" she called out. I smiled, because that's what strong women do. "I'm blessed," I said, even though my soul whispered otherwise. That evening, Marcus finally showed up, unannounced. My heart jumped before my pride could catch it. I opened the door, and there he stood, but Vanessa stayed in the car, engine running. "Ma," he said, not meeting my eyes, "Vanessa thinks you've been overstepping." I felt like I'd been slapped with words. "Overstepping?" I repeated quietly. "By loving my son?" He shifted his weight. "She says you call too much, ask for too much." I laughed then, a soft, broken laugh. "Baby, I raised you alone. Asking for a visit ain't asking for too much." His jaw tightened. Things are different now. Different. That word again, stripping me of my place. I wanted to scream, to remind him who packed his lunches and prayed him through sickness and heartbreak. Instead, I nodded. "I see." He left without coming inside. Didn't even notice the cobbler cooling on the counter. That night, I sat in the dark, realizing something painful. My son was choosing peace with his wife over compassion for his mother, and the loneliness I felt wasn't accidental. It was being built, brick by brick. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute, because betrayal has a way of pacing back and forth inside your chest. Every tick of the clock sounded like a reminder that time was moving forward without me, leaving me behind in a house full of memories and unanswered prayers. By morning, my eyes were swollen, but my back was straight. I've always believed pain shouldn't be allowed to bend you permanently. I wrapped my robe tighter and stood at the mirror, studying the woman staring back at me. Gray hair at the temples, lines earned from worry, not age, a woman who survived too much to be erased this quietly. I decided I would visit Marcus, not call, not ask, just show up like a mother who still believed she had the right. I dressed carefully. My church coat, pearl earrings, and the shoes Marcus once bought me for Mother's Day when he still remembered dates without reminders. The bus ride across town felt longer than usual. Every stop felt like a chance to turn back, but I didn't. Something inside me needed to see the truth with my own eyes. When I reached their house, a neat little place with white siding and trimmed hedges, I stood on the porch longer than I should have. I could hear laughter inside, not mine. Vanessa's laugh, sharp, confident. A child's voice followed, my grandbaby's. My heart softened and broke all at once. Marcus opened the door, surprise flashing across his face. "Ma, you didn't call." "I know," I said gently. "I wanted to see you." Vanessa appeared behind him, her smile tight like it had rules. "We weren't expecting company," she said. "I won't stay long," I replied, stepping inside anyway. The house was beautiful, I'll give her that. Clean, organized, cold. Family photos lined the wall, but I noticed something quick and painful. Not a single picture of me. I sat on the couch while Vanessa hovered, arms crossed. Marcus stood like a boy caught between two principles. I took a breath. "Son, I feel like I'm losing you." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Ma, you gotta understand, Vanessa's my wife, my priority." I ain't asking to be first, I said, my voice steady but my heart trembling. I'm asking not to be last. Vanessa spoke up then, her tone polite but pointed. With respect, you've had your time raising Marcus. We're building our own family now. Her words cut deep. Had my time. Like motherhood expires. Like love has an expiration date. I stood slowly. I didn't come to argue, I said. I came because I miss my son. Marcus finally met my eyes, and for a split second I saw guilt flicker. But it faded quick. Maybe some space would help, he said. Space. That word wrapped around my chest and squeezed. I nodded. If that's what you want. I didn't hug my grandchild. Vanessa didn't offer. Marcus walked me to the door, silent. When it closed behind me, the sound echoed louder than a slammed door ever could. The bus ride home blurred. I kept thinking about how easy it was for him to suggest distance from the woman who never distanced herself from him a day in his life. When I got home, I sat in my favorite chair and finally let the tears come. Not loud, not messy, just honest. I realized then that love without appreciation becomes a quiet kind of suffering. And I wondered how long a mother could endure being treated like a chapter that had already ended. The silence after I got home felt heavier than any argument I'd ever survived, like the walls themselves were judging me for believing love would always come back around. I sat there in that chair, staring at nothing, realizing that loneliness don't always arrive loud. It sometimes tiptoes in wearing the face of your own child. Days passed, quiet ones. No phone calls, no messages. I'd pick up my phone just to check the time, hoping it might buzz by accident. It never did. I kept myself busy the way women like me always do. I watered my plants, folded laundry that didn't need folding, cooked meals meant for more than one person. At night, I set 2 plates out of habit, then put one back. One afternoon, I went through an old photo album, something I hadn't touched in years. Marcus as a baby, wrapped in a blue blanket I sewed myself. Marcus with missing teeth, holding a spelling bee ribbon. Marcus on graduation day, hugging me tight, whispering, "Couldn't have done this without you, Ma." I pressed my fingers to that picture and felt a lump rise in my throat. Somewhere along the way, gratitude had been replaced by convenience. The next blow came unexpected. My church sister Dolores called me that evening. "Auntie," she said carefully, "I didn't know how to bring this up." My stomach tightened. "Bring what up, baby?" I ran into Vanessa at the salon. She said y'all decided it was best you didn't come around much anymore. For boundaries. Boundaries. A word folks like to hide behind when they don't want to say rejection out loud. I thanked Dolores and hung up, my hands cold. I sat there thinking about how decisions about my life were being made without my voice present, how my son had allowed a narrative to be written where I was the problem. That night, I finally called Marcus again. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Ma?" "Son," I said, my voice calm but tired, "are you telling people I'm not welcome in your life?" Silence stretched. Then he spoke. "We just need peace right now." "And I disturb your peace?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. That told me everything. I swallowed hard. "I carried you for 9 months. I carried you for 40 years. If my presence is now a burden, just say that." "Ma, don't do this," he muttered. "Vanessa's stressed. You know how she gets." That sentence broke something final inside me. Not because of Vanessa, but because my son had learned to excuse my pain to protect someone else's comfort. "I hear you," I said softly. "I won't force my way into your life." "She seemed?" When I hung up, I felt hollow, like a house after furniture's been moved out. I cried for the version of Marcus who once ran to me for safety. I cried for myself, for believing love alone was enough. The next Sunday, I sat alone in my church pew. Folks smiled, but they noticed. They always do. After service, Pastor James squeezed my hand. "Sometimes God isolates us," he said gently, "not to punish us, but to prepare us." Prepare me for what, Lord? I wondered. That evening, as I locked my door and turned off the lights, a thought crossed my mind that scared me more than loneliness. That my son might not realize what he's losing until there's nothing left to reach for. And for the first time, I asked myself a dangerous question. What happens when a mother finally stops trying? The day I stopped calling Marcus, the air felt different. Lighter and heavier all at once, like relief and grief had decided to share the same breath. I didn't make some grand announcement, I just stopped. No dialing his number and hanging up halfway. No rehearsing conversations in my head. I told myself, if my absence brings them peace, then let my silence speak. But silence got a voice of its own. Mornings grew longer. I'd sit by the window with my coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. Kids waiting for school buses, husbands kissing wives goodbye. Life moving forward without noticing I was standing still. I used to imagine Marcus pulling into my driveway, surprising me the way he used to. That imagination slowly packed its bags and left. One afternoon, my knee gave out while I was reaching for a pot on the stove. I caught myself before I fell, but the pain stayed sharp and angry. I sat down hard, breathing through it, realizing something terrifying. I had nobody to call. I could have called Marcus, but pride and pain stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking the phone. I thought about how old age creeps up quiet. One day, you're the backbone. The next, you're a liability folks don't want to schedule around. Later that week, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Vanessa's sister, Keisha. We'd never been close. "Miss Thompson," she said, her tone awkward. "I just wanted to let you know. Vanessa's pregnant." The news hit me sideways. Pregnant, another grandchild, another milestone I hadn't been invited into. "That's wonderful," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. "She's due in 6 months," Keisha added. "They're real focused on their little family right now." Little family, as if I hadn't laid the foundation they were standing on. After the call, I sat quietly, one hand on my chest. Joy and sorrow wrestled inside me. I was happy for Marcus, truly, but the thought of another child growing up without knowing my love hurt deeper than I expected. That night, I dreamed of holding a baby who kept slipping through my arms no matter how tight I held on. A few days later, I ran into Marcus at the pharmacy. Just like that. No warning. He looked thinner, tired. We froze when our eyes met. For a second, it felt like old times, like he might smile and say, "Hey, Ma." Instead, he nodded politely. "You doing okay?" "Okay." Such a small word for such a big lie. "I'm managing," I replied. He hesitated. "Vanessa's pregnant." "I know," I said softly. He looked surprised. "Oh." We stood there, strangers bound by history. He glanced at his watch. "I should go." "Marcus," I said, before I could stop myself. He turned back. "One day you're going to need me again, and I pray my heart ain't too tired to answer." His eyes flickered. But I was already turning away. That night, I cried, not because I was weak, but because I was changing. I felt something settling inside me, a quiet resolve. I couldn't keep begging to be loved. I had to protect what dignity I had left. I didn't know then that life was already setting the stage for a lesson none of us would forget. The call came on a Tuesday evening, just as the sun was sliding down and painting my living room in soft orange light. I almost didn't answer it. My phone had become something I feared more than I trusted. But when I saw the hospital's number, my heart dropped straight into my stomach. "Miss Thompson," a calm voice said, "your son Marcus has been admitted. He listed you as his emergency contact." Emergency contact. After all that silence, all that distance, my name was still written there. I sat down slowly, my hands already reaching for my coat before my mind could catch up. "Is he alive?" I asked, because mothers don't dance around truth. "He's stable," the nurse replied. "Complications from stress and exhaustion." Stress. Exhaustion. I closed my eyes. I knew those words like old friends. The bus ride to the hospital felt unreal. I watched my reflection in the window, older, steadier, carrying decades of restraint. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Another part of me was terrified. Love don't keep score, no matter how much pain it's been through. When I reached the hospital, the smell hit me first. That sharp, sterile scent that brings back too many memories of long shifts and late nights. I followed the signs to Marcus's room. Vanessa was there, pacing, her eyes red but her posture still guarded. She looked up when she saw me. For the first time, there was no sharpness in her face, just fear. "They called you?" she asked. "Yes," I said simply. Marcus lay in the bed, pale, tubes attached, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. My son, my baby. I moved to his side without asking permission and took his hand. It was warm, alive, thank God. He opened his eyes slowly. "Ma?" His voice cracked like a boy's. "I'm here," I whispered, smoothing his hair the way I used to when storms scared him awake. "Rest." Vanessa watched us, something shifting behind her eyes. When the doctor came in, he explained the stress, the pressure, the lack of rest. "He's been carrying a lot," he said. I looked at Vanessa then. She looked away. Hours passed. I stayed. I always stayed. Vanessa eventually stepped out to make calls. When she returned, she stood at the foot of the bed, her arms folded, not defensive this time, but unsure. "I didn't think they'd call you," she admitted. I met her gaze. "But they did." She nodded slowly. I guess I underestimated your place in his life." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My presence was answer enough. When Marcus woke again, he squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry, Ma," he whispered, tears sliding down his temples. "I messed up." I felt my heart crack open, but I held myself together. "We'll talk when you're stronger," I said. That night, I sat by his bed, watching the rise and fall of his chest, realizing something important. Distance doesn't erase motherhood, but it does test it. And while I sat there, I wondered whether this moment would change anything, or if gratitude would once again fade once the crisis passed. I didn't leave Marcus's side that night, not even when the nurse offered to bring me a pillow. I sat upright in that stiff hospital chair, listening to machines beep and breathe for my child, thinking about how life has a way of humbling us when pride gets too loud. The quiet gave me time, too much time to think. Around 3 a.m, Marcus stirred again. His eyes found mine like they'd been searching for hours. "Ma," he whispered, voice weak but heavy with regret. "I've been so tired." I nodded slowly. "I know, baby." He swallowed. "I tried to be everything to everybody. A good husband, a good provider. I thought pushing you away was part of growing up." That confession cut deep. "Growing up don't mean growing cold," I replied gently. Tears slid down his cheeks and I wiped them without shame. "Vanessa said you were too involved," he said, "that I leaned on you too much." I took a breath, and instead of finding balance, you erased me. He closed his eyes. "I didn't mean to, but intentions don't soften impact." When morning came, Vanessa returned with coffee and a guarded look. She stood there watching us like she was afraid of what might be said when she wasn't in the room. Eventually, she pulled a chair closer. "I know I've been difficult," she said, not quite looking at me. "I just wanted my husband to myself." I studied her face. Young, tired, pregnant, scared. "Wanting your husband ain't the problem," I said calmly. "Treating his mother like a threat is." She flinched. "Good. Truth is supposed to." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I should have handled it better." "Yes," I said firmly. "You should have." There was a long silence. Not angry. Necessary. Later that day, Marcus was moved out of ICU. Vanessa stepped out again, and Marcus reached for my hand. "Ma, when I get out of here, I want things to change." I looked at him, really looked. Change requires action, not just fear from almost losing something. He nodded. "I know." I wanted to believe him. Lord knows I did, but I'd learned something painful. Words come easy when beds are uncomfortable and futures feel uncertain. That evening, as visiting hours ended, Vanessa stopped me at the door. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I didn't come for thanks," I replied. "I came because I'm his mother." As I walked out of that hospital, I felt hope flicker, but I also felt caution rise. I'd been hurt too deeply to ignore the lesson life had taught me. Sometimes a crisis opens eyes. Other times it just scares people back into temporary gratitude. Only time would tell which one this was. When Marcus was discharged from the hospital, the sky was gray and heavy, like it couldn't decide whether to rain or cry. I stood in the parking lot watching him climb carefully into Vanessa's car, her hand steady on his arm. He turned back and hugged me, tight, longer than usual. For a moment, it felt like the old Marcus, for a moment. "Come by tomorrow, Ma," he said. "I want to talk more." I nodded, holding on to that promise like fragile glass. That night, I went home and cleaned my house, top to bottom. Not because it needed it, but because my hands needed something to do while my heart waited. I ironed curtains that hadn't wrinkled, lined up shoes that never moved, cooked a pot of soup just in case he showed up hungry like he used to. But morning came quietly. No knock, no call. By afternoon, I finally called Marcus. It rang and rang. Vanessa answered. "He's resting," she said. "The doctor said he needs low stress." Low stress. Funny how my presence always seemed to raise blood pressure, but my absence never lowered guilt. "I'll come another time," I said. She paused. "That would be best." I hung up slowly. The lesson landed heavy. Near death had softened words, not behavior. Days passed, then weeks. Marcus recovered, went back to work, posted smiling pictures online, baby updates, family moments. I watched from a distance like a guest peeking through windows they were once welcome inside. One afternoon, I received an invitation in the mail. A baby shower, Vanessa's name in gold letters, Marcus's beneath it. No phone call, no personal note, just an address and a time slot. I stared at it for a long time. At the shower, women smiled politely. I was seated at the edge. Vanessa hugged me briefly, already turning to greet someone else. Marcus thanked me for coming, but stayed close to her side like he was afraid of drifting too far. When gifts were opened, Vanessa laughed and cried. People clapped. I smiled. Inside, I felt like a prop. As I was leaving, I overheard Vanessa whisper to a friend, "At least she behaves now." That sentence followed me all the way home. That night, I sat on my bed and finally accepted something I'd been avoiding. The hospital scare hadn't healed the fracture. It had only paused the bleeding. I realized then that love doesn't mean tolerating disrespect, and motherhood doesn't require erasing yourself to make others comfortable. I whispered to myself, something has to change, and this time, it wouldn't be me bending. The morning I decided to step back for real, my heart felt strangely calm, like it had cried all the tears it was ever going to cry. I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight pouring across the wood, and understood something deep and painful. Sometimes self-respect arrives disguised as distance. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't send a message explaining myself. I simply chose peace. I stopped showing up uninvited, stopped waiting for apologies that never came. I poured my energy into things that still poured back into me. I joined a seniors walking group at the community center. I started volunteering at the church pantry again. I laughed with women who knew my worth without needing reminders. And slowly, something shifted inside me. Then the phone started ringing. Marcus noticed my absence after about 3 weeks. "Ma, you okay?" he asked, his tone cautious. "I'm well," I replied honestly. "You haven't been around." "I know." Silence sat between us. He didn't ask why. That told me more than any apology could have. A few days later, Vanessa called. That surprised me. "Marcus feels like you're pulling away," she said. I almost laughed. "Feels like?" "I am," I answered calmly. She hesitated. "Why?" I took a breath. Because being tolerated isn't the same as being loved. She didn't respond. Weeks passed again. Then came the birth. Marcus called me from the hospital, his voice shaking with excitement. "Ma, it's a girl." I closed my eyes. A granddaughter. "Congratulations," I said softly. He hesitated. "Do you want to come?" Want. Such a simple word. "I'll wait until I'm invited with joy, not obligation," I replied. There was a long pause. Then quietly, "I understand." Did he? I wasn't sure. That night, I prayed for that little girl. I prayed she'd grow up knowing love without conditions. And I prayed Marcus would learn what it truly costs to push away the people who built you. Days later, I received a text. A photo of the baby. No message, just the image. I smiled, then I set my phone down. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel desperate to be seen. I felt whole standing in my own space. But life wasn't finished teaching lessons yet, because sometimes, when you stop begging for a seat at the table, people start to notice the emptiness you leave behind. The quiet after the baby was born wasn't peaceful. It was watchful, like the world was holding its breath. I went about my days steady, but something told me this chapter wasn't finished turning. When family dynamics shift, they don't do it gently. They do it with consequences. 2 months passed before Marcus showed up at my door. I knew it was him before I opened it. A mother always knows her child's knock. When I did, he stood there holding a diaper bag, eyes tired, shoulders slumped. No Vanessa, just him. "Ma," he said, voice low, "can I come in?" I stepped aside without a word. He sat on my couch like a guest, not a son, looked around like he was remembering something he'd misplaced. "Vanessa's struggling," he admitted. "The baby cries a lot. She's overwhelmed." I listened quietly. "I don't know what I'm doing," he continued. "I thought being a husband meant cutting off everything else." I met his eyes. Being a husband means adding, not subtracting. His shoulders sagged. "I need help." There it was. Not apology, need. I folded my hands. "Help comes with respect, Marcus. Not emergencies only." He nodded slowly. "I messed up." "I know." He stayed for an hour. We talked, really talked, about boundaries, about hurt, about how easy it is to mistake control for love. Before he left, he asked, "Will you come see the baby?" I paused. "I will, when Vanessa wants me there, not just when you're tired." A week later, Vanessa called. Her voice sounded different, softer. "I could use your help, if you're willing." I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, "I'll come, but we're going to talk." When I held my granddaughter for the first time, something healed and something hardened. I loved her instantly, and I knew I would not disappear again. This time, I would be present on my own terms. The first day I visited my granddaughter, I felt a mix of joy and caution swirling in my chest. She was tiny, fragile, wrapped in a pastel blanket, and she smelled like new beginnings. But my heart knew better than to get lost entirely in the sweetness. Love alone can't erase the wounds life has carved. Vanessa opened the door with a tentative smile. "Thanks for coming," she said, voice soft, almost shy. I studied her face and saw a flicker of humility I hadn't noticed before. It was subtle, but it was there. I stepped inside slowly, carrying nothing but my presence and the years of care I'd survived. Marcus was busy making bottles in the kitchen. He glanced at me and nodded, a silent acknowledgement that yesterday's tension hadn't vanished entirely, but the first step had been taken. I knelt beside Vanessa and the baby. "Hello, sweet girl," I whispered. My fingers grazed her tiny hand. "I'm your grandma." The baby stirred and cooed, as if sensing the warmth I carried. Vanessa watched quietly, her hands resting on her knees. I could feel her tension, and I decided to address it gently. "Honey, I'm not here to take your place. I'm here to help." She nodded slowly, eyes flickering toward Marcus. I don't want you to overstep." "I understand," I said calmly, "but overstepping comes from fear, not love. Let's work together." Marcus finally walked over, holding a burp cloth. He placed a hand on my shoulder, almost apologetically. "Ma, thanks for coming, really." I smiled faintly. "You're welcome, baby. But let's be clear. Coming here isn't a favor. It's family. We support each other." The afternoon passed with quiet moments. I helped feed the baby, changed a diaper, and offered Marcus tips I'd learned over decades of raising children. Vanessa watched, occasionally asking questions, and I answered with patience. Not condescension, patience. There was a lull when the baby finally fell asleep. I sat back in the rocking chair, the little one in my arms, and thought about all the years I'd spent waiting for gratitude that never came. Here, in this room, I realized gratitude didn't need to be spoken. It could be shown through willingness to let me be part of their lives. Marcus and Vanessa spoke softly to each other, and I stayed quiet, giving them space while remaining present. It was a delicate balance I had learned the hard way. As I prepared to leave that evening, Vanessa stood by the door. "Thanks again," she said, a hint of sincerity in her tone. "I'll be back," I replied. "And next time, maybe we'll both learn something new." As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, a cautious optimism. The fractures of the past weren't erased, but cracks could let light in, and maybe, just maybe, we were finally learning how to shine together without breaking one another. That night, I prayed for patience, for understanding, and for the wisdom to navigate this new chapter without losing myself again. I realized motherhood isn't just about raising children. It's about teaching them to carry love forward while respecting the hands that guided them. And yet, deep inside, I knew there were still lessons ahead, ones that would test me, challenge me, and remind me that family isn't always easy, but it is always worth fighting for. The weeks that followed my first visit with the baby were quiet, but not empty. Every time I walked through that door, I felt a mixture of love and tension, like stepping onto a tightrope strung between past hurt and present hope. Each visit became a test of patience, of humility, of trust. One rainy afternoon, I arrived to find Vanessa frazzled. She was trying to soothe the baby, juggle laundry, and answer a work email all at once. I set my umbrella down and smiled gently. "Looks like you need a break, honey." She let out a long sigh. "I do, but I don't want to feel like I'm imposing." "You're not imposing," I said softly, stepping in to take the baby. "Let me hold her while you catch your breath." Marcus appeared from the kitchen, drying his hands on a towel. "Thanks, Ma," he said, a little sheepishly. "I didn't realize how much she'd need me too." We settled into a rhythm. Baby in my arms, Vanessa catching up on work, Marcus making bottles and checking diapers. I could see the relief on their faces, and it warmed something in me I hadn't felt in years. The quiet satisfaction of being needed without being demanded. But peace is fragile, and life rarely allows it to last too long. That evening, while rocking the baby to sleep, Vanessa finally spoke openly. I've been hard on you," she admitted. "I thought protecting Marcus meant keeping you at a distance. I see now that wasn't fair." I felt a lump rise in my throat. "Honey, I don't need apologies," I said. "I just need respect. And I've always wanted a place in this family, not as an intruder, but as a mother, a grandmother, someone who can help." Her eyes softened. "I understand." I smiled. "Good. Because this family, our family, is stronger when we stand together, not apart." Marcus stepped closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Ma, I know I made mistakes. I didn't realize how much I was pushing you away." I squeezed his hand. "Baby, I know you love your family, but love without thought can hurt. Promise me you'll remember that." He nodded, a weight of understanding in his eyes. "I do." As I left that evening, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. I felt a quiet triumph. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just the sense that the first real cracks of change had begun to appear. Back at home, I sat in my favorite chair, reflecting on the past months. I realized that relationships, especially those built over decades, don't heal overnight. They demand patience, forgiveness, and courage. Courage to face disappointment without anger. Courage to speak truth without losing love. Courage to keep showing up even when gratitude feels absent. That night, I prayed for wisdom to guide the next steps, for strength to protect my heart while being present, and for grace to teach Marcus and Vanessa the lessons I had learned the hard way. I knew more challenges were coming. Family never comes neatly packaged, but for the first time in years, I felt like I had the tools to face them. I wasn't just surviving this chapter, I was shaping it. It was a quiet Saturday morning when I realized something had shifted, not dramatically, but subtly, in ways that only a mother's heart could notice. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, looking out the window at the early sunlight spilling over the yard, and felt the faint stirrings of hope. My phone buzzed. It was Vanessa. "Can you come by? Marcus is trying to assemble the crib but keeps getting frustrated." I smiled softly. This was the first time she'd called me without hesitation, without making me feel like an outsider. I got ready and drove over, remembering the long years when every invitation was either indirect or full of excuses. When I arrived, Marcus was hunched over the crib, instruction manual in hand, sweat forming at his brow. Vanessa watched anxiously, holding our granddaughter in a carrier. "He's trying," she said, half amused, half exasperated. I walked in and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Let me help, baby," I said. His eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw that little boy again, the one who used to run to me for help with homework, scraped knees, and broken hearts. With patience, we worked together, the baby cooing softly in her carrier. I showed Marcus how to line up the screws, how to tighten them evenly. He laughed a little, finally letting go of the frustration that had kept him from asking me for help sooner. Vanessa watched quietly, sipping her coffee. "Thank you for being here," she said, not as an obligation, but as acknowledgement. When the crib was finally assembled, Marcus leaned back and sighed. "Ma, I don't know what I would have done without you." I smiled, holding back tears. "You would have figured it out eventually, baby, but I'm glad you let me help." We spent the afternoon together, talking about small things, recipes, old family stories, even a few gentle jokes about my infamous burnt pie. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just tolerated in their lives. I was invited. I was welcomed. Later, Vanessa asked me to hold the baby while she showered. I sat in the rocking chair, gently cradling her, and felt a deep, calming pride. This tiny life wrapped in my arms was a living reminder that love could survive distance and hurt, that motherhood didn't end when your children grew up. It evolved, transformed into something deeper and more enduring. Marcus sat beside me, watching us. "Ma," he said softly, "I want to do better. I want my family to know you're always part of it, not just in emergencies." I reached for his hand. "Baby, it's never too late, but words need to be backed with action. Let them see your love, not just hear it." The baby stirred and I hummed a lullaby, a song Marcus used to love as a child. He smiled, a full, unguarded smile, and for a moment I felt that years of pain and silence had been worth it. That night, as I drove home, the world felt lighter. I knew there would still be challenges. Old wounds don't vanish overnight, but I also knew that the cracks we had started to mend that day could hold the light of a new beginning. I realized something important. Sometimes, letting go of control allows love to grow stronger, and sometimes, standing firm with dignity invites the people who matter to step closer on their own. The next few weeks brought a rhythm I hadn't felt in years, a delicate balance between involvement and boundaries. I visited Marcus and Vanessa regularly, helping with the baby, sharing meals, and offering advice only when it was needed. Each visit was a lesson in patience, for me and for them. I learned to step in without overstepping, to love without losing myself. One evening, Marcus called me unexpectedly. "Ma, can you come over? Vanessa and we need to talk." I felt my heart flutter. The urgency in his voice wasn't panic, but it wasn't casual either. I grabbed my coat and drove over, praying that this conversation would be productive, not another lesson in hurt. When I arrived, I found Marcus pacing the living room. Vanessa stood by the window, her hands clasped tightly. The baby slept in her crib, a gentle rhythm of peace contrasting the tension in the air. "Ma," Marcus began, voice hesitant, "I need to apologize. Properly. Not just for the hospital, not just for the distance, but for all the times I made you feel unwanted." I listened, letting the words sink in. It was one thing to say them over the phone. It was another to hear them spoken with this weight. Vanessa stepped forward. "I need to apologize too," she said quietly. "I treated you like a threat instead of part of our family. I see that now." I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. Not from sadness, but from recognition. Finally, acknowledgement of years of unspoken pain. Marcus continued, "We've realized that family isn't just about what's convenient. It's about showing up, supporting each other, and valuing each other. We've been wrong." I reached for their hands, holding both pairs together. It takes courage to admit mistakes, and it takes more courage to change. Vanessa nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "We want to learn, Ma. We really do." The evening shifted. We talked about boundaries, expectations, and how to navigate our relationships moving forward. We laughed softly over memories of Marcus as a child, and I shared stories of their father, keeping his presence alive in the room. At one point, Marcus glanced at me and whispered, "I never realized how much your love shaped me until I thought I could live without it." I squeezed his hand gently. "Love doesn't vanish, baby. It waits patiently for recognition, but it also deserves respect." By the time I left that night, the air outside was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of new beginnings. I realized something profound. Reconciliation isn't about erasing the past. It's about acknowledging it, learning from it, and committing to a better future. As I drove home, I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in years, a sense of hope that this chapter of our lives wouldn't just be about mistakes and hurt, but about growth, understanding, and love that endured. And for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to believe that family could truly heal if we were all willing to meet each other halfway. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose that had been missing for years. Life had a way of teaching lessons in the harshest ways, but it also offered moments of grace if you were willing to accept them. I brewed my coffee, sat by the window, and watched the neighborhood stir awake. Birds chirped, children ran to catch the school bus, and I realized my place in this world, my family, was slowly being restored, but it required vigilance, patience, and boundaries. A few days later, I received a call from Marcus. "Ma, can you come over this afternoon?" His tone was calm but carried a weight I hadn't heard in months. "I want to talk." When I arrived, I found Marcus sitting at the kitchen table, baby in the bouncer and Vanessa nearby folding laundry. The atmosphere was different, not tense, not fearful, but tentative, like we were all stepping carefully on new ground. "Ma," Marcus began, "I've been thinking about the hospital, about the weeks when I pushed you away. I realized how much I took for granted, how easily I let my pride get in the way." I sat quietly, letting him speak. Mothers listen more than they judge. "I want things to be different," he continued. "I want my children to know you not as a distant figure, but as the heart of this family you've always been." I reached for his hand, holding it firmly. "Baby, it's never too late to start, but actions speak louder than promises. Show them, not just tell them." Vanessa, standing nearby, nodded. "We've been selfish. We focused so much on our nuclear family that we forgot the roots, the foundation that built us." I smiled softly. Acknowledging it is the first step. Now it's time to act. That afternoon, we all spent time together. I helped feed the baby. Marcus changed diapers with newfound patience, and Vanessa began to relax, allowing herself to accept help without seeing it as a threat. I shared stories of Marcus's childhood, stories he hadn't heard in years, and watched as his eyes softened with memory and understanding. It was in these quiet moments, laughing at a small spill, soothing a fussy baby, recounting a forgotten birthday, that I realized healing wasn't about grand gestures. It was in showing up consistently, in presence and patience, in teaching love through action rather than words. Before I left that evening, Marcus hugged me tightly. "Ma, I don't say it enough, but I'm grateful for you. I've been blind, but I see now." I whispered softly, "Gratitude is nice, baby, but respect and love are better. Don't forget that." Driving home, I felt the familiar ache of past pain, but it was softened by hope. The cracks of our family had been acknowledged, repaired, and strengthened. The lessons of distance, pride, and hurt were slowly being replaced by understanding, presence, and mutual respect. And I realized, as I sat in the quiet of my home that night, that motherhood, love, and family don't end with age or resentment. They evolve. And when guided with patience, they can grow stronger than ever, even after years of neglect. It was a crisp Sunday morning, and for the first time in years, I woke with a heart that felt full, yet steady. Not trembling with worry or aching from neglect, but calm, aware, and proud. I dressed slowly, putting on my favorite dress in pearls, and brewed coffee strong enough to awaken even the most tired soul. Today wasn't about drama or hurt or lessons harshly learned. Today, it was about presence, about showing up fully, without fear. I arrived at Marcus and Vanessa's house just as the sun spilled golden light across the yard. The baby slept peacefully in her stroller, and Vanessa was on the porch, smiling in a way that didn't feel forced. Marcus greeted me with a hug, tight, real, and warm. The kind of hug that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that says, "We're home." "Ma," he said softly, "thank you for never giving up on us." I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't known for years. Baby, it wasn't about giving up or holding on. It was about love, patience, and knowing my place in this family. The day unfolded gently. I held my granddaughter, sang lullabies she seemed to recognize from my humming in the hospital, and shared stories from Marcus's childhood, tales of scraped knees, first bikes, and birthday surprises. Vanessa listened, her eyes softening with each memory, and even laughed at a few stories, realizing that my love had always been the glue that held their family together. Later, Marcus asked me to sit down with him. "Ma," he said, "I want my children to grow up knowing you, not just hearing about you. I want them to learn gratitude, respect, and love from you." I reached for his hand. "Baby, that's all I ever wanted. But remember, lessons are learned not through words alone. They're learned through seeing, feeling, and experiencing love consistently." Vanessa nodded. "We've realized how much we missed out when we kept you at a distance. I promise it won't happen again." I felt tears prick at my eyes, not from sadness but from relief. The years of hurt, the silent tears, the hospital scare, the distance, all of it had led to this moment. And in that moment, I felt the full weight of what it meant to be a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who had survived pain and heartbreak without losing her dignity or love. As the sun dipped lower, casting warm light across the living room, I realized the ultimate lesson I had learned. Family is not just about blood. It's about presence, respect, and love that endures despite mistakes, distance, or time. It's about showing up, not only when it's convenient, but especially when it's hard. Holding my granddaughter close, I whispered a prayer of gratitude, not for their change, but for the chance to witness it. For the first time in decades, I felt truly at peace. My children were finally learning what I had tried to teach all along. Love is patient. Love is consistent. Love is never forgotten, even when it feels unseen. And as I watched my son and daughter-in-law with our little girl, I understood the quiet truth of motherhood. It isn't just about raising children. It's about shaping a legacy of love that endures through generations, a legacy that nothing and no one can erase. I leaned back in my chair, breathing deeply, and for the first time, I felt the fullness of a life lived with purpose, strength, and unwavering love. This was not the end of our journey, but it was a beginning built on patience, resilience, and the enduring power of a mother's heart.